I am a woman living with HIV. Well, in the beginning, when the idea of getting tested was introduced to me, I turned it down. I was like, no, I don't need that because the information I had, a certain kind of people, people that lived a certain lifestyle, whether you were gay or substance user or different lifestyle. And so I didn't need that. And it just so happened that same person ran into me again, but by the third time I was like, okay, how much is this? And he said it was free. And I said, okay, I'll take it to help you out. And when it came back and the results were positive, I was devastated because I knew where I'd been and I knew what kind of, in my mind, people I'd been with, you know what I mean? So it was devastating as a woman. And it was a secret that I kept for a minute. When I first got diagnosed, I got into services right away, but my initial provider, her presentation scared me. You know, it was like, oh, you have to be committed. If you miss one, you're not, all these things will happen or whatever. And so it was more of a fear base rather than me being receptive to the information. So for about 5 years, I made all my appointments. I just didn't take the medicine. And my provider went out for maternity leave, and I had to see somebody else. I'm sure she said some of the same things, but within 6 months of seeing that provider, I made the decision and I was taking medicine. So for me, that front person, that first person you see, makes such a big difference. When I first found out, I did not know of a women-specific agency, but I will say, when I was diagnosed, immediately they set me up with a doctor's appointment, and within 3 days, somebody from a community-based organization came by and picked me up and took me to a support group, but it was a co-ed support group. And on that day, I did meet and see other people. So having that experience so early on actually did open my eye to know that there were other people like me. Right away, I want to say I told my mom right away, but before I told anybody else, I learned more what I could about it myself, because one thing I was told early on was, if you're afraid and you share this information with somebody else, it'll make them be afraid. So in order to help ease your experience sharing your information, then educate yourself, become comfortable with you, and no matter what their reaction is, you'll be okay. My experience with my family when I disclosed, I don't have a horror story. My family embraced me, and I've never had any issues. Any work I've done, anything I've been involved in, for the most part, they've been there to support me. Aunts, uncles, cousins, I'm so grateful for that. I've actually been an advocate, I would say, since 2004. It takes a special kind of person to want to reveal, but my goal is if I can help one other person to not, shy away, not be in the closet because of the stigma, to go get you some health care, to see and to know that you can continue to live on and live a positive life after diagnosis. Somebody has to do it, and I just happen to be one of those that are chosen to do this thing. And with that, I have to embrace it. It's part of my journey. The AIDS Memorial Quilt is the largest piece of folk art in history. people all over the world who have lost someone that died to AIDS. They take the time and memorialize a loved one. And you do that by making a quilt. The measurements are 3 by 6, which is the standard size of a grave that they dig in the graveyard. Call My Name is a project of the quilt. It's the African American piece that we are encouraging African Americans to be a part of it. The quilt is over 60 miles long, with about a mile representing African Americans. But the pandemic has hit the African American community really bad, and it's more people than that. So we encourage you to call the name of your person, your loved one that passed away from living with HIV/AIDS. The amount of quilts that represent African Americans has to do with stigma. Sometimes a mother might have lost a child and didn't want anyone to know that that's what she lost her child to. Another thing I think is just people not knowing the quilt is there. But what we have been doing with the Call My Name project and where we started is in the churches with the little old ladies at the churches, and they know somebody, or they know somebody who knew somebody who passed away from living with HIV, and those ladies helped us get started and realizing just how many people have been holding on to this secret. Women in the Black community actually take the lead in the HIV fight, basically because we have to make sure everything is right. We got to make sure the families are right, the schools are right. We got to make sure our communities are offering what we need, and we have to educate people in our communities on how important it is to make sure we have the healthcare system we need in our areas. Being out front and going to the legislators and making the moves that we need to make the changes happen so that we can save our community. Straight men, they're there, they're just not up front as much as we would like them to be. The misinformation in our communities actually it's still there. It's strong in the South and in the Black community. So automatically, if a straight man says he has HIV, you start to wonder. Did he ever experience any gay behaviors or whatever? Has he ever been with a man? Or is he a substance user or something? Immediately somebody assumes you did something. That might not be your story, but it tends to make the straight man step back some. I think one of our greatest challenges in the Black community with HIV is still stigma. People are finding it kind of challenging to grasp the point that it's just good old-fashioned health care. You go, you get your blood pressure check, you get your glucose check, you get your HIV check. And we have got to spread the message that it's got to be routine. And if you get a positive diagnosis that you were not really looking for, we can help you. You can still have a long, healthy life living. But if you don't know, you lessen your chances of being able to have that. So we have to spread the message that no matter what, we love everybody and we want everybody to take care of themselves.